Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In a diplomatic setback for India, the US lawmakers have called on New Delhi to end the humanitarian crisis imposed in occupied Kashmir for the last 2 months. In a report, the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations asked India to end its communication blackout and lift the curfew in the valley. The lawmakers have asked India to end curfew, lift communications blackout, and release all the arrested from the valley. It is the first time that the US Congress has taken an initial step towards legislative action against India. The Senate committee report was introduced by Senator Chris Van Hollen. In an interview, Hollen said the US is closely monitoring the situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Hollen said the Indian government recently denied him permission to visit the valley to assess the on-ground situation. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has once again expressed concerns over the grave situation in Indian-occupied Kashmir. In a briefing, the UN chief spokesman Stefan Dujarric said Guterres has asked Pakistan and India to resolve the Kashmir crisis through dialogue. Dujarric said the Secretary General's position on Kashmir has not changed. He said Guterres has underscored the need for addressing human rights abuses in occupied valley. Dujarric said the UN Secretary General believes human rights must be at the forefront of the resolution of the Kashmir crisis. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has called on Azad Kashmir citizens to exercise restraint and not cross the line of control to help their besieged brethren. Khan said anyone crossing the line of control to provide humanitarian aid to Kashmiris would play into the hands of India's skewed narrative. India-imposed communications blackout has severely hit the information technology sector of occupied Kashmir. Silicon Valley in Rangrerat industrial estate near Srinagar is at a complete halt since 5th of August. Locals said internet shutdown is a devastating blow to the software business in the valley. Since India's illegal move, over 800,000 mobile connections and internet services remain suspended in the valley. Meanwhile, the auto sector is also affected in the last 2 months, as there is not a single car or truck sale in the valley during this time. The curfew and the communications blackout in the valley has entered 62nd consecutive day. Occupied Kashmir has been cut off from the rest of the world for the last 62 days after India stripped the region of its autonomy and imposed a curfew and communications blackout. There is now a shortage of food and medicine in the valley. Details in this report.
The crisis in occupied Kashmir is rapidly turning into a humanitarian crisis. Presence of 900,000 troops has turned the valley into a prison. Thousands of Kashmiri leaders and activists have been arrested since India revoked the special status of Kashmir on the 5th of August.
When we fainted, they gave us shock to bring us back around. They put mud in our mouth. They said, "Don't scream, don't scream." Why are you screaming? I told them, "Don't beat us, just shoot us."
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has asked the world to intervene to stop the human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. Khan warned that India could stage a false flag operation to divert the world's attention from the Kashmir issue.
In India, the police have begun criminal proceedings against 50 celebrities for protesting against the mob lynching of minorities. The celebrities raised their voices in a letter to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The note was signed by prominent personalities including Bollywood filmmakers Anurag Kashyap and Mani Ratnam and actress Kukanna Sen. The letter to Modi demanded an immediate end to mob lynchings of Muslims, Dalits and other minorities. They say there can be no democracy in India without dissent. The police say a so-called first investigation report has been registered against the celebrities in eastern Bihar state on the orders of a local court. They say a lawyer had petitioned the court to seek criminal proceedings against the 50, accusing them of tarnishing India's image. After days of unrest, Iraq's Prime Minister Adil Abdul Mahdi has ordered the curfew in Baghdad to be lifted. After the government's clampdown on protesters, Iraqi lawmakers have demanded the resignation of Mahdi's government. In a statement, a powerful Shia cleric Muqtada al-Sadr called on the government to hold snap elections. Former Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, who leads the third largest parliamentary bloc, has also called for the government's resignation. In the meantime, hospital officials say the death toll from the violence between protesters and police has risen to 65. Iraq has been rocked by days of protests by thousands of people demonstrating against endemic corruption and chronic levels of unemployment. 17 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party have been killed in Turkish airstrikes during a counter-terror operation in northern Iraq. In a statement, Turkey's defense ministry said military operations backed by air power were carried out in Zalp, Gara and Navasin regions of the country. The ministry said Turkey will continue to destroy weapon emplacements and shelters used by the terrorists. Over 400 Kurdish militants have been killed in northern Iraq over the past 4 months. Turkey holds the PKK responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in a 30-year terrorist campaign. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said Turkey will carry out an air and ground military operation east of Euphrates River in Syria. This is his most direct indication of an incursion since Ankara and Washington decided to establish a safe zone. Speaking at the opening of his AK party's annual camp, Erdogan said the operation can start as soon as today or tomorrow. He said Ankara is aimed to water the east of Euphrates with fountains of peace and settle refugees there. The president said besides multiple warnings to negotiators, Turkey has acted with sufficient patience. Erdogan said Ankara has made preparations, completed operation plans, and given the necessary instructions for the operation. Meanwhile, the US-backed SDF force says it will defend itself against any unprovoked attack by the military. A Syrian rebel group has pledged to back a Turkish operation against Kurdish fighters in northeast Syria. Rebel leader Abdurrahman Mustafa says people in the area of east of the Euphrates have been forced to leave their homes. Mustafa said he is supporting Turkey to end this injustice. In September, Turkish and the US military officials agreed to develop a peace corridor for the displaced Syrians. But Turkey later accused the US of providing arms to the Kurdish fighters. The European Union has rejected Britain's request to hold Brexit talks this weekend. The European Commission said Prime Minister Boris Johnson's new proposals do not provide any basis for finalizing a separation agreement. Earlier, Johnson had reiterated his commitment to leave the bloc on the 31st of October with or without a deal. The government has acknowledged that Johnson will seek a further Brexit delay from the EU if no deal has been reached by 19th of October. Johnson's top advisor, Dominic Cummings, says the government will not change its negotiating position. Ahead of their visit to Pakistan, the Duke and the Duchess of Cambridge have said that they are looking forward to building a lasting friendship with the country. In a statement, Kensington Palace released the details of Prince William and Kate Middleton's official tour. The palace official said the royal couple will visit Islamabad, Lahore, and northern areas of the country. It said they will also interact with the organizations which focus on empowering young people. The royal couple has requested to be provided with ample opportunities to interact with Pakistanis as much as possible. The statement said Duke and the Duchess are keen to learn about the climate change issues affecting Pakistan. The British royal couple will arrive in Pakistan for the 5-day visit on 14th of October. In Washington, Democratic lawmakers have subpoenaed documents from the White House as part of their impeachment inquiry against President Trump. The documents relate to a recent telephone call which Trump used to urge Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate his rival Joe Biden. The subpoena was issued by the chairman of the House of Representatives Committees for Oversight, Intelligence and Foreign Affairs. The committees have given Trump until October the 18th to hand over the documents. A separate request for the records has also been sent to Vice President Mike Pence to clarify what role he may have played in Trump's overtures to Ukraine. In the meantime, Trump has denied any wrongdoing and says he will formally object to Congress's impeachment inquiry. In the United States, President Donald Trump's administration has passed a new decree against illegal migrants. White House has issued a proclamation banning immigrants from obtaining U.S. visas if they cannot afford to pay for their own medical care. The order says immigrants must not now show they can obtain health insurance within 30 days of their arrival. The administration says people seeking asylum and refuge will not be affected by the new law. The measure comes into force from November the 3rd. In the United States, aides to Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders say he suffered a heart attack earlier this week. Campaign advisor Jeff Weaverin says the veteran senator underwent emergency surgery after complaining of chest pains at a campaign event in Nevada. Weaverin says surgeons operated on the 78-year-old Sanders to remove a blockage in one of his arteries. In a statement issued after he was discharged from hospital, Sanders said he is now feeling great and looks forward to getting back to work. Sanders has centered his presidential campaign on a promise to provide free medical care to all Americans. After weeks of unrest, Hong Kong is banning people from wearing masks at public assemblies. The government invoked a tough colonial-era emergency law to enforce the ban. Speaking at a press conference, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, said violence is destroying the city and the situation can't be allowed to deteriorate further. Lam expressed concern at the participation of students in protests, saying it jeopardized their safety. But she denied Hong Kong is in a state of emergency. U.S. tech giant Microsoft has accused Iranian hackers of targeting the U.S. presidential campaign. The company's vice president, Tom Bird, says a hacking group linked to Iran has carried out cyber attacks on U.S. journalists and the government officials. Bird said only 4 accounts were compromised by the group's significant cyber activity. The group, which Microsoft calls Phosphorus, used information gathered by researching their targets. Bird says the group used that information to gain password reset features and attempt to take over targeted accounts. Microsoft has informed the account owners, advising them to ramp up their online defenses. Portuguese voters will cast their ballots tomorrow, with opinion polls pointing to the re-election of the ruling Socialist Party. Most analysts believe Prime Minister Antonio Costa's party will win more seats, but it is unclear if it will win an absolute majority in the parliament or not. The Socialists currently lead the ruling Garanonca coalition with support from 2 far-left Eurosceptic parties. Costa hopes to secure a majority so he can govern without his Garanonca allies. His administration is popular because unemployment has fallen to just 6% since the last elections. But supporters of the opposition Social Democratic Party certainly have not given up. They rallied on the streets of Lisbon on the last day of the election.
I hope Dr. Rio wins the election in Portugal because I think he is the ideal man to be Prime Minister. Not only because he is serious, but also the proposals he presents, in my view, are the best proposals for a country developing in the first world and a European country.
Mexican volcano Popocatépetl has erupted, blowing a dramatic ash column into the sky. The volcano has blown lava and rocks up to 2,000 meters into the air. Popocatépetl is over 5,000 meters high, making it the second highest mountain in Mexico. The volcano is the 5th highest in North America. In northern Italy, unseasonal weather caused by climate change is wreaking havoc amongst bees, which are one of the most important insect species on the planet. The world's crucial pollinators, vital for farming, and wild plants are struggling for survival in the unusually early heat. More in this report.
The beekeepers stand beside piles of beehives, worried and anxious. Not having honey is the least of their problems. This year, the bees could make only tiny quantities of honey, not even enough to keep alive, sparking fears for their future. Climate change is causing habitat loss for bees unable to migrate to cooler areas and establish new hives. The world's honeybees are in steep decline, with 10 million hives disappearing in only the last 3 years. Fighting back tears at the fate of his charges over the summer, Italian beekeeper Riccardo Polide said this year was the hardest harvest of his life.
We're not talking about low production or a lower production than normal. We are talking about pitiful quantities of honey that is not even enough to keep the bees alive.
Samuele Culata, a beekeeping technician, blames increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for the reduction in nectar production.
Plants must defend themselves from extra carbon dioxide, and as a result, they reduce certain activities, including nectar production.
The Italian Apiarist Association has asked the government to declare a national disaster so beekeepers can benefit from aid. The association, however, is not optimistic about the future.
When the sight of the plastic bags, bottles and other debris littering the seabed becomes too much, there's only one thing to do. Dive to the bottom of the seabed and clear the junk yourself. This solution has been adopted by Oceanium, which has removed hundreds of kilos of plastic rubbish from the West African state of Senegal. The details in this report.
According to the United Nations, 8 million tons of plastic ends up in the world's oceans every year. In the Senegalese capital of Dakar, the fight against this plastic tide is well underway, thanks in part to a team of amateur divers operating under the name Oceanium.
It's very polluted. Unfortunately, some of the locals throw their rubbish straight into the water. It's sad.
Restricted by oxygen levels, the divers have just 1 hour per descent to gather as much rubbish as they can. Oceanium organised their first clean-up operation 2 years ago. Now, the plan is to make them more frequent.
We realized that the sea is too dirty. A lot of people have this view of the sea as a rubbish bin, so they just throw away all sorts of things. That's why we're here, to clean up.
In 2015, the country passed a law banning the sale of plastic bags. But 4 years on, this has still not come into force. And Gorée Island, a popular tourist destination off the coast of Dakar, is particularly affected by this pollution.
We're in summer, so we're seeing a lot of beer cans and plastic bottles and cups. People who go to the beach are drinking and partying, and if there are no bins, things get left on the beach. And then, with the swell, it ends up in the sea, and because it's a bay, it ends up here.
The team's most recent cleanup operation saw hundreds of kilos of waste removed from the ocean. It's certainly a start, but there's still a long way to go if Senegal is to attain President Macky Sall's goal of becoming a zero-waste nation.
The Warner Brothers movie Joker has hit theaters despite a wave of criticism that it glorifies a killer and could encourage copycat attacks nationwide. The public on Hollywood Boulevard differed in their opinions when asked about added security to Joker screenings in the United States. More in this report.
The movie, starring Joaquin Phoenix, is about a marginalized clown who goes on a killing rampage.
Same questions every week. How's your job?
Weeks of publicity surrounding the disturbing portrait of a bullied loner has raised fears of a violent outbreak. 7 years ago, a gunman opened fire on moviegoers watching The Dark Knight Rises, killing 12. Police in major US cities have been on alert as the film opened in theaters.
I think for the most part it probably is just a film, right? But at the same time, there's been some pretty crazy things happen in the past, so it doesn't hurt, like I said, I don't think, to be prepared. I think it's fine.
However, not everyone felt safe about the idea of seeing the film in a cinema.
I would wait a while for it to die down before I go to see it, and I'm conflicted about it because of the issues in America right now with gun violence, and it's a tough time right now. So
Warner Media says the movie does not aim to hold this character up as a hero.
And now the weather situation from around the world. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus News.